record. But yeah. What's up there? It's a human mess here.
It's a human mess.
A humid.
Oh, humid. Gosh, I was picturing people like strewn about. It's pretty good. It's pretty cool because it's Seattle. So, and I had a friend in town from Pennsylvania over the weekend. So that was really nice to see somebody after 4.5 years. I mean, it's just the length of time that's gone by between seeing people over the last few has been a little excessive. So that's nice. I think we hit 90 once. So, that's like, it's like 75 today or something. It's pretty pleasant. So no complaints with weather.
Yeah, no, this is the prime time to complain around here. So,
How close are you to Tokyo?
maybe 150 kilometers or so. Not particularly close, but not the
Okay.
farthest. I mean, we
Okay.
are in
I
the
was just curious.
mountains. Yeah. Yeah.
I have the friends are planning a trip to Japan, and my husband Aaron had spent time there, like studying abroad. So, the a trip may be in the works to come over.
Mhm.
So I was just
Yeah.
curious what your geography was.
I mean, we're in a good place. This is like resort land basically. So, but
Sounds
yeah,
nice.
it's not necessarily like if people are heavy skiers, they tend to show up here in winter. You see a lot of foreigners around in winter, especially. But yeah,
Are your seasons the same as our seasons? Like you're still, northern hemisphere, right? So you're still summer at this time. Like
yeah.
it's still winter in the winter that we think of. Okay.
Yeah, Tokyo and Atlanta are about the same any time of year, I would say.
That's interesting that you went so far, but it's all kind of the same.
Well, Nagano in general is a little cooler because it's got altitude, right? So
Okay.
we do get a somewhat proper winter, and it'll stay below freezing for like a few weeks at a time, that sort of thing. So, which
Do you think in the metric system now?
yes,
Okay.
there isn't. No, when you're saying temperatures, I was thinking they're trying to have to work out what that means now. So,
In
where's I'm like, "Oh,"
Celsius.
yeah, and I'm like, oh my god, it's 32, and people are like, yeah, and
I'm in I'm on a couple one Discord and people from all over the place, lots of Europeans, lots of Australians. And so they're always talking in Celsius. And like the small percentage of Americans are like calculating that over here. And it's fun to I don't know. It's fun
yeah,
meeting people from so many different places and just
moderating the Star Trek International live chat because
are
I'm on
you?
a Discord for that, right? And they do their like Thursday night they do their regular, whatever their it's a podcast, right? So whatever they did that week, they'll talk about that. But then they're like, oh, well, we should set up a time for the international folks, and I kind of walked into that one. So
That
I
sounds
mean, it's
great.
fun, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got. I was like, oh, see, I'll try it out, and then people seem to like it, and now it's like, oh, I'm already committed. Okay. But yeah, that's a Sunday night thing now. So, but yeah, what do we have? We had a couple people like real night owls in America, right? Like bartenders, they're just cutting off work.
Mhm.
We had people in Finland, the Netherlands, Ireland. One dude like one valley over from me, which is kind of trippy. That so he's like I guess you could say 50 miles. I was about to say 50K, but yeah. It does make more sense. I mean,
It does. It really does. I don't know why we're so stubborn about it. At this point, we're just being stubborn for stubborn's sake.
mm,
But
yeah. Okay. I put this prologue up. Let me
mhm.
give a 5-second pause and I'll start it up. Hello, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we delve into all of the episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here, coming back for the third episode, I believe. It's Dorian Bowen. Hello.
Hello.
I was told for a piano in the house, don't get a film critic. I guess or a theater critic in this case, but you're not quite a critic. You're a preservationist, so we're safe.
Yeah, we're safe. I like to think of myself as a historian more than a critic. So it's more about history and less about is this good, is this bad? Because people have their own opinions that are valid. So
Do you have a piano in your house?
I don't. I've never had a piano. I don't know how to play. If I see one, I sit down and pretend like I can play and kind of poke around. But
Mm.
that is not my musical talent. No.
My mom has like a in my parents' house. She has like a '80s Yamaha digital piano with like no sensitivity. So yeah. I
I've
tried to
seen
buy her
a
a new one
player
once.
piano. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said I tried to buy her a new one once, but she likes that one. So okay, sure.
I was gonna say I've seen a player piano before, and that's pretty neat. Like, I mean, obviously it didn't have the same effect as the one in this show, but it is kind of a spooky, neat thing to see it doing its thing and the rolls and of course I love old things, so that's part of it. But it's that
And
would
that's
be a
not.
fun thing to have in the house if you were gonna have something. I would go for the player piano, despite having seen this house.
I know Atlanta is not your hometown, but I don't know if you ever been to the Strange Antiques Museum in Stonington, in
No.
Georgia. It was this kind of warehouse space, and they had a bunch of old flip movie things, right? Like old timey stuff. They had some player pianos. They had some self playing organs. What are those called? There's a really good melodiums or whatever they're called. So yeah, I don't know if that's still there and running, because obviously those machines would have been had to have been somewhat difficult to upkeep, right? So
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I always like going there when I was a kid, and yeah, seeing the old timey movies. I guess that's where I would see like some of the silent comedies and stuff. Actually, doing it the proper way.
Absolutely.
Nickelodeons. There we go. That's one of the words I was looking for.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I was thinking of the flip books because there are flip books that are, when you say flip movie, I
Oh
think
no,
of the
no.
ones that are like cartoon animated, you know.
Yeah. That's why I had to like kind of sub in the word Nickelodeon, because these are the kind of ornate metal machines that you look in and turn them.
Did it have like a crank?
Right, you had to crank it. So yeah.
Excellent.
I just I was thinking player pianos. My film vocabulary wasn't coming out quite right. Let me do some trivia on this one. The original air date was February 16th, 1962. I think I wrote 63, but I believe it's actually 62. Oops. This is Earl Hamner Jr.'s second script for The Zone. He'd already turned in The Hunt and will be getting more of his work later. David Green directed. He's got a feature film hit with his work on Godspell, but he really hit with TV movies and miniseries, with directing credits on Rich Man, Poor Man, and Roots, just to cite the jobs that won him Emmys. So I'm having like a thing where I didn't like edit this very well late last night, and my allergies are kicking in, so it's kind of a double whammy. Barry Morris played Barry Morris played Fitzgerald Fortune. He had his own Barry Morris show in Canada for a bit, and you would have found him on The Fugitive. For this trivia making sci-fi geek, though, he is immortal for his role as Victor Bergman on Space 1999. Esther Fitzgerald was played by Joan Hackett. She played lead against Charlton Heston and Will Penny, and received a supporting Oscar nom for Only When I Laugh. She played many recurring roles on TV, but I'll choose The Love Boat if I need to cite something. Don Durant was Greg Walker. I guess he pulled himself up by his bootstraps, as he helped to build the first kinescopic recorder and stereophonic sound recorder for Warner Brothers. This shifted into TV recurring roles, and he became the lead on one of Aaron Spelling's first TV shows, Johnny Ringo. Muriel Landers played Marge Moore. She was a large lady and found her groove doing comedy, appearing as a regular on the Frank Sinatra Show, the Jack Benny Program, and later Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Cyril Delavanti was Martin the Butler. We've already seen him in A Penny for Your Thoughts and The Silence. He will return to the Twilight Zone one more time. Yeah, I didn't
I
realize how.
most
Oh,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. Sorry. Time zones. Cyril is the one I know the most, actually, because I recognize him from Night of the Iguana, which is where he got his Golden Globe Award. And I don't know much about Barry Morris. When I looked at his credits, it looks like the first decade he did films, and then after that, he was like a television mainstay. So I just must have missed him along the way.
What's as yet unreleased, but actually over at our podcasting empire, we have been slowly recording a Space 1999 commentary episode. So I've been seeing a lot of Barry Morris recently.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, oh, whoa, crazy. He's here, and he doesn't look quite as old. I mean, yeah.
He's actually, I did the math when they talked about her 26th birthday and how there was a gap between them. And he was approximately 43 doing this, and Joan was about 27. So that's about a 16-year gap. So they cast appropriately to have, a May December situation.
Yeah, well, I'm just used to seeing him like 10 years older, right? Although
Hmm.
he's only in the first season. It looks like they didn't even bother to put him on the. I'm sitting here with the DVDs, and it doesn't even look like they bothered putting him on the artwork because he's only
When
a
was
one
that
season guy.
released? When was 1999 released?
The actual show or the DVD set?
Well, the show. The
Uh,
show aired.
it's weird that I filmed in 1973. I mean, the first season started filming in 73, but didn't come out until 75. So there was like a really long production schedule, which makes it slightly confusing. So,
Okay. But
um,
basically 25 years projecting into the future,
that's right. Yes, which is now the past, which makes the show even
which is
weirder to
now
talk about.
25 years in the past, pretty much, which is, yeah. All right.
No, what I was about to say originally is I didn't realize how shocked my voice was until I started reading the trivia. um, I have just given you the prologue. If you'd have a read of that, please.
Sure. Mr. Fitzgerald Fortune, theater critic and cynic at large, on his way to a birthday party. If he knew what was in store for him, he probably wouldn't go, because before the evening is over, that cranky old piano is going to play those piano roll blues with some effects that could only happen in the Twilight Zone.
All right, take that down. Why does anyone want to go to this guy's party in the first place?
That is a really good question. I mean, I think it was for her more than him, because he says at one point, these are mainly your friends, so let me torment them. So I think that's why. But yeah, whoever wrote this, well, you mentioned, but I've forgotten the name, obviously did hate theater critics. I think that's the most biting commentary of this whole story.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the folks writing for a show would have been doing, probably some off Broadway and plays and sort of stuff. So they would have eaten it a few times for sure. Mm.
Hmm. I feel like this is one of the more predictable and simple episodes of the Twilight Zone that I've seen thus far, though. I think that every character telegraphs what their alternate personality is. So it almost is like the setup and the follow through for every single one. I mean, before you even see Sterling, you know this guy's such a patronizing jerk that he's going to get a comeuppance of some sort, right?
Yeah, I know when Greg shows up, I put in my notes something flippant about that if I can find it.
The
Mark.
Bachelor, Greg the Bachelor.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, just like how much they're like just building up from the second he walks in the door, how it's going to play out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, so I enjoyed it and I liked the concept, but it wasn't hard to predict what was going to happen from every time you saw a character. It's like, oh, well, okay, I know that whatever the opposite of what they are now is what we're about to see. Although at least they didn't go too far through people. I guess they all told that was like six characters, right? It was the antique store owner and the couple and the bachelor and Marge and the butler are all the people we saw different versions of.
yeah, of the folks I was trivying, I think I left out the shopkeeper because it honestly just because it's getting late at night and his wiki didn't look that interesting on first glance. But yeah, and I was like, man, my trivia is looking long at that point, so I didn't get to him anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much all the people in this. It's a 25-minute episode. You can only do a weird hypnotic regression on 3 or 4 people. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought you wrote in your notes that you thought Marge was like a regression, and it seemed like it at first, like she was going back to childhood, and that would have been interesting if there were some alternate stories there. But in the end, it was just about the antithesis of what they showed to people was who they were on the inside. So it was
yeah,
simpler than it looked.
but I guess by that time he's done it a few times, so maybe you just see him getting a little bit of skill at manipulating people at this sort of thing by the time he gets to her. Because
That's true.
the first couple of people, it's like, what's going on? And he does work it out pretty quickly, so faster
He
than people
does.
usually do it.
The list on IMDb does have the specific titles of the music. So there's a little bit of thought and detail put into, like when it comes to his, it's lullaby and he becomes very childlike. So the actual musical pieces that are selected also forecast like how the person's personality is going to be. And I thought that was strange that he allowed his wife to do the last role. Like I guess it didn't occur to him at any point that him picking the roles was part of the power that he had, so that when eventually Esther chose the role because at his command, somehow he thought that you know he was going to expose someone other than himself, even though the control had been passed over to her.
How did she know what to switch it to anyway? That thing's only been in the house for a few hours.
Yeah, we never saw her learn how to do it. I guess he'd done it enough times by then that she was watching. But and I
Maybe,
don't know how many roles there were either. That's kind of unclear. Like he kind of gathers some at one point, but it's not, you know, it's true. It's a detail that's overlooked a bit.
maybe we missed a few hours where he was practicing and like bringing in the mailman and stuff, and having the mailman tell his deepest, darkest secrets to him.
It happened it's just a two scene thing, right? I mean, it's the party is the second scene, the first scene is the antique store. So and you made a joke about it, the delivery getting there spot on. I mean, what a fast delivery person for this giant piano that suddenly by the evening it had arrived already.
That is service. That's service you don't, at least maybe in the States you don't get. Actually, in Japan, you probably would get that service still. So, yay. um, the piano itself, I really liked. It was so weird. I mean, like I've seen a lot of the old timey ones at the museum I was mentioning before, but this had mildly, demonic looking stuff on it, which I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah, IMDb says that the face on it is a tiki. It's a New Zealand, I think you say this Maori, Maori
Yeah, that's
tiki.
right.
Yeah, so that was a nice touch. That's the spooky like masthead of the player where it parts underneath and reveals the roles.
Okay, yeah, I was about to say tiki, but I was like, that can't be the right word, can it? But okay, it is the right word.
Yes.
So, yeah, that works. Oh, I had a point I was gonna make. It just escaped my head. Too bad.
Well, I'm thinking about that shop now and all the creepy things, like that puppet thing that was like hanging from the noose. Like what is that? And that guy he took a mask and he went to put it somewhere else. He never was actually doing anything. He just sort of was like, it was like busy work. And there's just so many creepy things in there. Treasures unlimited, supposedly.
Yeah, the store decor and the music combination. You might have seen. I wrote his age like a Les Baxter album, which I don't necessarily mean that as a bad thing. But sometimes like if you listen to old Exotica albums and suddenly it's like dun 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 dun, dun and you're like, really? Is that really what you want to do? Oh yes. The other thing with Maori Tikis, the Tower of Terror, not the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. This is the one in Japan where, despite doing this podcast from Japan, the Twilight Zone is not that popular here. So at Disney Sea, not Disneyland, Disney Sea, they have the Tower of Terror, a completely different story, but it involves a turn of the century industrialist who pilfers relics from cultures. So as you're going through the queue of the ride, you see paintings of him and his manservant like holding a tiki or something and running from the indigenous people that are chasing them. All while the people, the cast members, the people that work the ride are like talking about this man with deep reverence. But the plot of the ride is that the 1900 New Year party he had a tiki that he had stolen from it might have been like Mary, I don't remember, but he ashes his cigar on it, so the tiki kills him. That's the point of the ride
I mean,
by dropping him down an elevator. So that's the whole thing. Now you get dropped by the down the elevator in the ride, hence the Tower of Terror. So
yeah. Well,
it's
that's
still.
very disrespectful. So I would expect a tiki to retaliate immediately in such a way.
Oh yeah, that's why the ride is like so entertaining. So again, the juxtaposition of the very serious like historical preservation style cast members versus the ridiculous paintings of him doing horrible things is great. And yeah, out in the garden, there's a bunch of like really like bawdy statues, like marble statues of half dressed women and stuff. So yeah, it's, if you pay attention, that's to this line, you're like, oh yeah, this guy's horrible. Again, he's kind. That's why I'm thinking about it with this episode. It seems kind of like the same kind of vibe. So maybe if they didn't transmute the IP, they definitely got the flavor pretty well there.
Well, I was going to recommend a movie. If people like this episode, I'll go ahead and jump to my recommendation, which is there's a 1974 film called From Beyond the Grave, where Peter Cushing is an antique owner. And the film is four different stories. It's horror, supernatural, yarn. And so, unlike the shopkeeper in this episode, who doesn't seem to know what he has, right? I mean, he's the first person we see affected by it. and Fitzgerald's like, you're extraordinarily susceptible to the power of music, aren't you? He doesn't seem to know, but in From Beyond the Grave, Peter Cushing is just cryptically watching these people just walk right into this, and they'll buy an artifact or an antique, and then something horrific and supernatural happens to them, and of course there's no returns on your purchase, and so that's a really fun movie. So if people like this concept and want to see it really elaborated on with a shopkeeper or an antique store owner that really knows like what he has, then definitely Peter Cushing's your guy and From Behind the Grave.
A film comparison that doesn't, well, yeah, well, okay, you're saying that's better. So this is the other one for films and filth. We just did Citizen Kane again, where so it really stuck out how Kane's lady leaves him and he goes on like a really impressive rampage. So this one I would just like not the same thing after leaves. I mean, knocking the clock off the table. I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
this is kind of a low rent
Just a
rampage having
tray.
just
I mean,
watched.
it's a small room, so you can't knock too many things off. There's no multiple mirror hallways that he can like pounce by. So yeah, you're right. It was lackluster, but I liked how he was backing into the corner though. That was really like that felt good to see him like start to kind of melt, and everyone's leaving, and he's just backed himself into the corner with the piano. I thought that was a nice.
Yeah, it's more of a production reality thing than like because what Orson Welles had pretty much that they're shooting that day, and he can just go nuts and do it. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
here, it's like, okay, we got 5 minutes, film rampage, finished.
Yeah, and really one and a half angles to shoot it at too. So no impressive close up. And then of course the poor butler is the one who comes in at the end to find him, sort of all crumpled up and tell him that he's not funny anymore. And so that's, it makes a lot of sense that the wife would go ahead and leave with her whatever a tryst, I think is the word I saw. So but that's satisfying to see that she's maybe like free of this character, and that he received the comeuppance that we knew he would from the moment he started talking. Oh, what's that line? Hold on, I wrote it down. That his wife hasn't a trace of talent, so it's best that he get her a player piano, because he didn't want her to waste all that time finding out later that she hadn't. So I
Yeah,
mean, really
that,
riles you up.
yeah, that's one of the more condescending gifts you can give someone, especially
Absolutely.
an expensive one. Well, I guess what's not that expensive because it's out of an antique store. Like I said, there's a used shop here near here where I could buy like an early '80s digital organ for $300, which yeah wouldn't fit anywhere. That's why it's been in the store for 10 years because you'd have to be
That's a
insane to buy
steal.
it. It is a steal, but the
Research.
thing's massive.
Yeah.
So yeah, wouldn't work so well. I guess the acting MVP here probably was Cyril with his happy moment. I thought that worked really well.
Mhm.
Which I don't know. I guess it's from an acting thing. Is that really a challenge, or was it just like viscerally fun?
I think it was just really fun. I mean, he has such a weathered face, and I mean, all he had to do was smile, and it was shocking compared to his normal face, his normal demeanor. But it was effective, and it was good that was an important thing for Esther to see. Like that was a good plot point to fit in before the guest arrived, so that she was then in on the power of the piano as well. And so the two of them were fighting each other. He wants to use it, she doesn't want to because she knows. And so it adds to that discomfort that you see her have when he's tormenting the guests with things, and she's just it sort of sums up her marriage. It seems she's just sitting uncomfortably there while he's doing things to insult other people. So that seemed true to character and true to form.
I wonder if you can play a player piano. The ones I saw at the museum, they had plexiglass on the keys, so you couldn't try it out, right? So,
Mhm.
but if you can do both, that's reasonable, I guess.
That would be cool if there's a switch and you can just do manual or automatic.
Well, there are definitely a few switches. They have tempo and volume were there, but I mean, if it's not running the roll, if you can actually just sit there and play it, or I don't know. So, um, these are
Well, I guess
technologies
he's,
people have lost knowledge about. I mean, if you have a player piano and it breaks, who's going to fix it?
yeah, you, hopefully.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
you, the person who owns it, not you. Like call Matt up and have him come over and he'll know. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, as 2 hours later, I'm sitting there in a pile of rusted 19th century gears. It ain't a piano no more. Yeah.
But then you'd know for sure.
I did find the expression everyone is a two-face. I guess probably because I'm tying Batman in there, which I don't know if in 1962 that was it would be obvious to tie in Batman or not, but yeah.
I'm gonna look that up because I feel like I should know that.
I
I
mean,
think
Two-Face was
Batman.
around. I'm just not sure if Two-Face was like culturally known. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, there's another cultural reference in the trivia that I want to bring up, which is when Marge arrives and talks about how she's been on more diets than our Arcaro. I think that's how you say it. Arcaro has horses. Eddie Arcaro was a jockey, Hall of Fame jockey, and he won two Triple Crowns, which apparently no one has done that since. So that's another cultural reference that's sort of embedded in the party right as she arrives.
No, yeah, so yeah, the people that used to be big in sports and stuff. There was a Japanese tennis pro who just pulled off some kind of amazing accomplishment, right? In winning opens or whatever. Sorry, I'm not enough of a sport guy to have like committed this to memory, but it was like, yeah, the last person to do this was blah 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 blah, and so I looked that up, right, just out of curiosity. And it's like from like 1934, where apparently this guy went out and like had some success in some opens, and then the Japanese government like pressured him so hard to keep playing that he threw himself off a boat in the Malacca Strait. So at
Oh my
like a really
gosh.
young age, so I was like, whoa, okay, because it was I just thought it was weird because I'm reading this newspaper article. Oh, the last person to achieve this feat is blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, okay, and I was just curious when that was, and then I find this like totally like disturbing story. I'm like, whoa, is that
That's so
burying the lead?
tragic.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
gosh.
hopefully the current tennis pro will not have those issues. But yeah,
But yeah, hopefully they're doing because they want to and not because they're bullied and pressured into remaining into it. That's awful.
I mean, like when you see an international competition, the North Korean team is there. Everyone's just like, huh, what's going on behind the scenes of that? Which
that's that's true. You're
they,
very
yeah,
true.
they lose and are never seen again or something. um, do you have any other big observations you would like to toss out on the piano in the
I don't know.
house?
I'm going through my notes. I don't think so. I think you mentioned in your notes that Fitzgerald Fortune is an absurd name, and I will agree with you. If they'd done one or the other, like a Fitzgerald something or a somebody Fortune, but together that alliteration is a bit intense. Maybe that was his pen name. And so we were getting to know him from his pretentious pen
I think that's the other reason the Tokyo Tower of Terror ride kept coming to mind because I think that guy's name is Harrison Hightower. So kind of the same sort of vibe. Hightower. I just got it. Okay. But yeah, I almost feel like that's like the better version of this episode if you go ride that ride. So, but then you have to go to Japan and go to Disney Sea and probably stand in a very nice line for an hour. But
name.
yeah,
That's extra credit. Once you see the episode, then let us know if you go see it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You should. It's the best park in the world. Um, theme park. I mean, there's probably nicer national parks if you want that sort of thing. Um, you get a
That's all
volcano
I've
though.
got.
So let's do some questions. Who in this episode enters the Twilight Zone?
I think the easy answer is Fitzgerald, because while everyone sort of gets a taste of it, he's the one who kind of falls backwards into it and is not expecting it to happen to him. So I think that he's the one who it truly builds up to him experiencing it.
Yeah, I guess he's the one that gets broken, right? Everyone else just has like a weird time and goes about their business.
And leaves the party. Yeah, exactly. Well,
Marge.
also because, sorry, I'm going to say, just add that because no one else was covering it up as hard as he was, also, I think. I mean, I think everybody felt like they'd been exposed, but not to the extent that he had built up his personas to be such a fortress around him. So that made it, doubly disconcerting for
I
him.
think I got this wrong. Just I guess he was so broken he still seemed a little childlike. But my first take was when he destroyed the role, like he had like sealed himself into that state,
Oh, I like that. I didn't think about that.
which I actually think I misread that. But he isn't acting that much different with with Marvin the butler at the end, right? So I was sitting
Right.
there like thinking, oh, is he now trapped in this vulnerable state? Which is
Oh,
I
I
think
like
a
that.
I guess you could
I
read
like that
that
a
in a
lot.
way.
That makes it like a better episode. I think we're good. We should go with that. That's fantastic.
We'll go with that because no, at the end I actually went straight to the wiki and looked at their plot summary to see if I had read that correctly. And according to the wiki plot summary, no, it just says he was regretful about what happened and when he's talking to the butler. But
Mm.
also the butler is like, I'm not laughing at you anymore, right?
Hmm.
Maybe that could inform the fact that he is in fact now trapped in this state, which is, you know, I mean, as much of a horrible person as he is, you don't want. I mean, you would feel like almost bad for him being trapped in that state, right?
I mean, not in 24 minutes. I don't. I feel like he can work his way back up to humanity from there. But yeah, I like that alternate interpretation a lot.
Also, Twilight Zone season 3 has a lot of mentally smashed dudes that apparently are just going to wander around in a hallucinatory daze for the rest of their life. So this would, if you want to count him, I think that's person number 4 this season.
That
Yeah,
counts.
but yeah, I am like, I mean, obviously Marge was quite exposed, but it's somewhat feasible she'll pretty much have forgotten about this a month later, you know, whereas that's not the case for Fitzgerald Fortune. Yeah.
Well, what she had to expose was like sort of what was it? It was loneliness. It was, she wanted to be beautiful. She wanted to be a snowflake. She wanted to be thin. Like those are all pretty, understandable things. And people did laugh at her when she was dancing. I also didn't understand that. There was nothing wrong with her dancing. I think it was just a heavy set like joke and doesn't play well these days. But yeah, I think that she would recuperate faster than the others. And actually, the guy, what was the guy's name? The one who was having the tryst with the wife, like
Greg.
that was more of a secret. That wasn't so much like a special identity. I mean, it was like the hardened bachelor on the outside, but in love with the wife on the inside. But I mean, that was one secret that was exposed, which wasn't quite the same as Marge having like just innermost vulnerability exposed. And same with the wife. It wasn't like that it wasn't that we were really surprised that she really was mad at her husband and frustrated with him and felt taken for granted. It was that she verbalized it. So again, that's not something that she necessarily will regret later. It's, yeah, everybody, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, everybody does have a little nuance to the thing that gets exposed. So maybe I was overly harsh in the beginning by saying it was predictable, because once you kind of delve into it and think about their experience after it happens, then I guess there could be a little bit of fluctuation in how people handle the experience that they had.
Yeah, I'm going back to the dancing. I am kind of wondering if that is some where this episode has become very dated in a way because like watching the episode, I was like, oh, she'll impress people. She's moving reasonably gracefully. Me not really knowing what is good or bad dancing. So when the result
Yeah.
was like, ha ha ha, the fat lady's dancing, I was like, oh, but
Yeah.
she actually seemed to know how to move properly. So what's the
Yeah,
problem?
she was actually very graceful. I think that's a very dated thing about how if you are a certain size, then you're not allowed to be graceful. And that does not play anymore. That was never accurate. So
That said, it did cross my mind. I didn't write in my notes, but now I'm about to say it out loud, which is worse, I guess. When she did show up, I was like, oh, I guess this episode is going to end with her singing, which is not how it ended. But but yeah,
no,
I almost.
I cringed when she got there because I knew that her weight was going to be a plot point because she's the only heavy set person there. So that was why I kind of winced at her arrival. But she was a nice lady and she was one of the nicer people there. So
Well, Fitzgerald's the only person that really seemed to suck. I mean, people may have had their indiscretions or things, but they weren't like uh psychically attacking, not psychically, mentally attacking other people, you know, and picking them
yeah, he said
apart.
as he was sort of spiraling out, he said that he was afraid of the dark. He was a poor, frightened kid. He was afraid of people. He liked to hurt them, and that he envies everyone. So that was his version of honesty, was admitting that he envied everyone, and out of that envy came his spite. So.
I don't even know if there's any, you know, the does he deserve it question. I think this one is a telegraphed yes, unless you want to disagree. So let's actually ask if Esther, Greg, and Marge and Marvin deserve to be involuntarily, revealed.
Mm. I think it's good for Esther to be revealed because I think part of um her suppressing how she felt was a disconnect within herself. And so it was important for her mental health and her future well-being to connect with that anger that she'd been suppressing. So I think it's good for Esther. For Marge, it's an embarrassment. I don't think she's going to become less of a sensitive person. I think it'll be an episode that she looks upon unpleasantly. And the butler, he is kind of hard to read. It's hard to know if Cyril enjoyed that or he wants to forget it. I don't know. What do you think about the others? The guy, the Trist guy, and the butler. I can't read them as well.
Well, the butler, I mean, he's kind of gives Fitzgerald a little kick in the butt at the end, right? Again, with the I'm not laughing at you anymore sort of thing. So he's the one that does tell him, yeah, you have you've really done it this time, that sort of thing. So fine mess you've gotten yourself into. That sort of thing.
And it sort of begs the question, why does he work for him? Because he does put up really with a lot. Does you think that's it? Maybe.
And the Twilight Zone critic is one of the highest paying jobs. We've seen this in a few episodes now.
Is that true? Okay, well, I would think that someone who's so good at their job would have other alternatives, but it looks like he manages it pretty well. I don't think he was lying when he was happy and he was saying that, really telling Fitzgerald how he would brush off the criticism he received. So maybe he's just really got it together and he can separate his work life and his personal life. And he remains stoic. I don't know. Maybe he's just really good at that.
Fitzgerald, fortune at least gives some good bonuses. Maybe, I don't know. No, the other one was last season. I want to say the machine one. The thing about machines, I don't remember. Anyway, it's early season 2 where it's got another theater critic who lives in a mansion for some reason. So.
Oh.
This one at least seems like a penthouse or something, right? Like a Manhattan penthouse. So in this episode, right? So still though,
things have changed. Yeah, or theater critics always made more money than film critics, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe, or newspapers were just a much bigger deal at the time, and magazines. I mean, maybe they do have star critics, but I still have kind of trouble accepting they be living in places like this, but whatever. we can make that little disconnect. And then Greg, I guess Greg would be the most embarrassed because he was screwing around with behind the back of a guy who deserved it, but still being still an indiscretion. So
and I assume that was during the marriage. They said that, or she said that it had been 6 years. So I guess the implication is that had occurred within those 6 past years, not something that happened before the marriage, but something that was more recent.
That's yeah, because at first that's what I thought, but then I was like, wait a minute, she would have been like 1920, which I guess okay. Yeah, at first I thought that maybe they were dating beforehand, but then I got the impression it was an affair as the dialogue went.
Yeah, I guess the math kind of works out on that. She really is surrounded by a lot of significantly older men, so I guess that's how that plays out. Okay.
Where would you like to place this one on the trip-o-meter?
Are we going with the ending that you created where he's actually trapped there? Because that significantly amps it up for me. If it's just an experience they all have and then the piano goes back or whatever, or what does happen to the piano? Does he keep it? Do they burn all the rolls? It's kind of a powerful supernatural entity that now is in that house. So I wonder what the future of that. Isn't anyone afraid of it? Do you go out buy new rolls and see who else you can mess with? What happens to the piano?
Did he learn anything? I mean, maybe he gets over it in a few days. But that's with the not my ending. In my ending, he is broken and wouldn't be able to do that. But
so it's a scale of 1 to 10, right? Where 10 is the most trippy and 1 is the least.
I usually make 5 the most trippy. So
5. Okay, smaller scale. Okay, so I would
you
say
can have it both ways if you want.
Well, I would say that if he's not trapped, it's like a 1.5 to 2. If he is trapped, I'll give it a 4 because that kind of unsuspecting like captured in that state forever thing is really amps it up a lot. So that's my very detailed answer.
I'm going to give it a very milquetoast 2.5 and say one thing that would have really upped the score for me is if the piano rolls had been like really like weird, creepy music or something, like not just these old standards, you know? I would have more
Uh,
exotica music or something. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad call because here, I guess for me, like some of the music, they're like, oh, this music causes this emotion. And I'm like,
mhm.
not for me. It was kind of a disconnect. So if it was all just weird, maybe that would latch on a little bit. Because I think it was maybe it was Marge's music where I really didn't expect the reaction she gave. I kind of expected something different, and I'd have to hear the music again to even tell you what kind of vibe I was getting. But the
Well, I can
music and
read
the
you
vibe.
I think of having read the list of the songs. So here's the list, which I think is pretty spot on. So the shopkeeper listens to "I'm in the Mood for Love." Marvin hears "Smiles." Esther hears the Saber Dance, a musical number where ballet dancers dance with swords, right? That works. Greg hears "These Foolish Things Remind Me of You." Marge listens to Claire de Lune and Jerry Fitzgerald, right? Jerry is not the name I'm associating with him yet. So Fitzgerald hears "Lullaby," and
They
that.
call him Jerry a fair amount.
Oh, okay. I think Fritz down for a while. I mean,
See,
Jerry
I guess that's the
Fitzgerald.
thing. The names seem to correlate more with what happens in the music itself, right? And I guess being a very a music dork guy, like I'm like, oh, that vibe doesn't hit for me. I mean, that happens in
Mhm.
scoring sometime. My chief example for that is the James Bond film Goldeneye, where I feel like the score often doesn't match what's going on screen. Like they have like there's kind of a romance, like he's with the Bond girl or whatever. It's kind of playing this like active music, and then later he's in a casino and it's playing a sweeping romantic theme. I'm like, what's going on? Other way, do it the other way. What are you doing? So,
Hmm.
I guess that's the thing with a real good film score. People don't have that complaint, right? It works.
Mhm.
It can work for everybody. Well, almost everybody, and with a really good score.
Mhm.
Um, we already mentioned Citizen Kane, so there's one where like the music fits like a glove. I don't think anyone's ever complained about Bernard Herrmann's score for that. But yeah, I didn't really like how they used their stock music in this episode, and I'm not 100% sure how they would have made that better. It might just be
Mhm.
like it's this what we're hearing is like too cliched. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
which
I guess
does
if you
make
don't know what you're listening to, if you don't literally read those names, like it took, that was, I was familiar with that music, but I didn't know the exact names of things. And then it did become a little bit more, but a little too on point for that to be triggering the things that we saw.
right. So I guess that was the one thing in this episode that really like kind of had me at a bit of dissonance that I just didn't feel the music worked for the purpose they were doing that.
Mhm.
So but this is the music that would be on player piano rolls. Maybe I
Mhm.
just I wanted piano rolls that matched the tiki on the front of the piano.
But then everyone would have known to be afraid of it. I think the unsuspecting nature of the music that seems so pleasant, but it's triggering something in the individual that is unexpected. I think that was the intent, but I understand where you're coming from with a more varied musical background. So,
And also in real life, music does trigger you like this sometimes. You don't necessarily have this strong a reaction, but it
mhm.
can definitely change the flavor of your mood and
Mhm.
thus how you are relating with people. So this piano, while supernatural, is a real effect. It's just amped up to Twilight Zone proportions.
And that's what the shopkeeper says when Fitzgerald says, like, you're extraordinarily susceptible to the power of music. And the shopkeeper's response is, isn't everybody?
Yeah. Just not to that degree. Did the
Right.
shopkeeper follow what was happening with that thing?
I don't think so. I don't think he understood it. He seemed to snap back into it and then he was grumpy again and sold the piano. And like, yeah, I think he didn't quite, which is spooky. That's the spooky character, to be so unaware that it took you over, because everyone else seemed to know. Everyone else was like, oh, that was weird. What was that moment about? But the shopkeeper is the one as the very first example that we saw, he just sort of goes back to normal, and it's Fitzgerald observing it that, we're there with Fitzgerald in observation, not the self-awareness of that particular person.
Maybe because he was doing business, so he didn't notice. Like maybe you have to know what you're saying. The way you're saying it isn't, you wouldn't notice, right? But you just realized you said I hate you to your husband, right? So you don't really understand that your demeanor also changed when you did it. Maybe that's how this thing worked. We're gonna, kind of do this now.
Yeah. He did contradict himself, because he was like, oh, that, all these pleasantries. And then he's like, oh, I hate birthdays. They're a waste of time. So he contradicted himself so that we as the audience knew that something had shifted and that he was unaware of it.
Yeah. So, but he was, his goal was to sell the piano. That's what he did. So,
I guess so. It didn't seem like he really wanted anybody in the shop, but I guess there's some antique store owners like that.
I guess we'll wrap this one up. Is there anywhere on the internet you want to send people?
Not today.
Okay, that's cool. I'll do my rant, which is kind of like a little player role in my head at this point, right? So, because it's Time Enough Podcast on Twitter, I guess, and Facebook. You support us on Patreon at Podcastio Podcastius, where we do lots of podcasts like Films and Filth. We talk about really good movies. We talk about really bad movies. Dorian was there for Vertigo, if you want to go hear that episode. Occult Disney, where we look for the weird mysteries behind the mouse. And there's some gaming podcasts that you usually won't hear me on. The first being the Game Show, where gamers game each other out games. Luke Loves Pokemon, and Hyrule Field Report about the Zelda games. Okay, I think I made it through. My player role went in a slightly different order than usual, though. Okay, there we go.
That's quite a list. You're very proficient.
Yeah, well, I do it like 3 times a week now, right? So, but no, as co-host Luke often says, you start to hate yourself because that happens, right? I don't know. I guess you don't have to do your own plugs, but just it's like the ritual. It's like the social ritual of the end of your podcast, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And hey, maybe you want to go here. Maybe this is your first time here. Welcome, and maybe you want to check one of those things out. I don't know. Or you could just hit the, when that starts, you hit the plus 30 seconds button, right? So that's possible too.
That's when you start interjecting it in different places. You don't just always do it at the end, because then you'll have people tune out. So you need to sneak attack them throughout the podcast at different times, and then you'll catch them. Then you'll get them.
I feel like the most important thing about a piano in the house is Time Enough Podcast you can find at Twitter. Just interrupt yourself midstream to plug various points in the podcast. I'll have to try that sometime.
Okay. You'll never see it coming. It'll work, I promise.
No, I said don't have piano in my house, but I guess I'm gonna go play the guitar in my house.